we're pleased with the work from last week to get the emergency COVID relief bill, the $2.2 billion relief bill, off to the governor. We had a really strong bipartisan vote in the Senate. That's really the central piece of our early relief package, although there are certainly other pieces which we passed as well. There are two more bills that are still to come. One is an education graduation flexibility bill that was sent over from the House, and we will be passing that this week in the Senate. And then there's a liquor license liquor license fee flexibility bill that's in the House that they'll be taking action on soon. And all of this also with the unemployment insurance tax relief bill that we passed earlier. So well on our way there, and then just working through the rest of the bills with fiscal cutoff this week, and looking forward to 3 partial days on the floor this week before we really hit the floor in earnest next week.
Lori Jenkins, Speaker of the House here. We are today is policy committee cutoff for us, and so we won't be on the floor at all until next week. I think next Tuesday will be the first day that we're back on the floor. Just kind of, I think, more of a reflective note right now. One, there were serious questions, I think, at the beginning of session or before session about whether or not we could actually move bills off the floor. We've definitely proven we can do that with this next step package, which will really help thousands and thousands and thousands of Washingtonians. Secondly, our committees are operating very successfully, getting a lot more members of the public to sign in and to seek to testify and to make their wishes known on bills. That's worked very well. Although I am also very happy to say that we asked our members in the House to really focus what they wanted to work on this session, and to focus in 4 primary areas, those being COVID response, economic recovery, equity, and climate change. And we've had about half the number of bills filed this year that we had in prior years, and they are predominantly focused in those 4 areas. So I think we're feeling good as we approach cutoff today in just a little bit less than 3 hours, that we'll be able to move forward on these priorities for Washingtonians.
Thank you.
With that, we can open it up for questions.
Great. First, we'll go to Rachel LaCourte with the Associated Press. Rachel.
Hi, for Senator Billig, the capital gains tax is scheduled for a committee vote tomorrow. How likely is it that that's going to come up for a floor vote before the Senate budget proposal is rolled out?
Well, thanks, Rachel. The first thing before us is to have the vote in Ways and Means. We have a striking amendment that is either just public or will be soon. And I think people will see that what we did in that striking amendment is that we listened to the hearing, and we heard concerns about the threshold and about the need for some exemptions. And I think you'll see the testimony very much reflected in the version that will be considered by the committee tomorrow. So we will have that action tomorrow, and assuming that it gets out, we'll caucus on it and take it from there. But this is one of the most well-vetted bills, one of the most talked about bills that we've had. And if it's an opportunity for us to, one, make the tax code more fair while also investing in things like childcare that we know are so important to people in our state, and have a long-term return for the taxpayers. If we can do that, if we can lower some other taxes, it's definitely something we should be taking to the next step of the process, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Last week, Senate Republicans put forth a proposal of their own that would not raise any taxes, but would use the rainy day fund have you had an opportunity to look at that, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, if that was for me, I just saw the highlights, so I have not had a chance to go in detail, but I certainly will.
Sarah Gensler with McClatchy. Sarah.
Thanks, Aaron. The big $2.2 billion relief bill with allocating federal funding. Senator Billig, you mentioned that there was a bipartisan vote out of the Senate. The vote out of the House wasn't so bipartisan, and I'm wondering if Speaker Jenkins, if you would kind of speak to what you think the difference might have been there, or sort of if it gathered momentum in the Senate. Senator Billig, you're welcome to speak to that as well, just sort of what the difference there might be rooted in.
Well, I mean, I'll say a little bit and then I'll kick it over to our majority leader because he worked a lot more on this bill. But you saw a number of amendments in the House from House Republicans that were spending kind of money that we had for one time only on things that require ongoing funding, and their amendments actually were, we would have loved to have adopted a number of their amendments, but they spent more than what we had in the rainy day fund, even. And so, while we shared interest in policy, there wasn't a case made, about funding them. And so I think that may be where one of the differences was between the House and the Senate. And I don't know, Representative Sullivan, if you have other kind of thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, it was a big disappointment. I think obviously we had differing opinions upon what might be in that relief bill, but in the end, that final vote, that was about, you take away the amendments, that final vote was on whether we should send $2.2 billion out to daycare centers, to our schools, to healthcare, to a variety of things, rental assistance that people really needed. And so it was really a big disappointment that they did not vote for a bill that helps so many people across this great state.
Sarah, do you have a follow-up?
No, not unless anybody else has anything to add to that, but I think you all covered it. Thanks.
Great. Next, we will go to Jerry Cornfield with the Everett Herald. Jerry.
I believe it's probably for Senator Billig. This morning, a Senate Business Committee advanced the credit scores bill, 5010, but it's not the same way that it came in. They did a substitute that continues to allow credit scores to be used. When you talk about the dynamics of the conversation and what led to the substitute being written this way, a majority of your members did want to limit the use of credit scores. That's not happening. So if you could talk about the dynamic and how close was it to actually dying without this substitute?
So I don't serve on that committee, but it's definitely is an important bill. So I have some familiarity. The nature of the legislative process is that things get worked and molded and often move toward compromise positions. But I think the form in which it's coming out is very much consistent with the themes of our session, because this version of the bill protects people from having their insurance rates negatively impacted by poor credit that was caused by the pandemic. So when we talk about COVID relief and recovery, when we talk about equity as priorities, as the speaker talked about, the Senate shares similar priorities. This bill, even in its form now, hits on several of those priorities. So it's definitely a positive step forward. I don't think it's as big a step forward as many members wanted, but I think it's good policy. And, we do this all the time. We take a half a step forward and then we come back in the next year or 2 years down the road and take the rest of the step.
Jerry, do you have a follow?
Just a general question, to both chamber leaders. Just what can you tell us as of today that you know about if and when there'll be a phase 3 for reopening? Have you guys asked for a phase 3? Are you concerned that it won't happen? What insights can you share?
Well, go ahead, Speaker.
Well, I was just going to say, no, I've not asked for a phase 3, but I think that'll be a topic of conversation the next time I meet with the governor about what that looks like. I would say I am concerned about whether or not there will be a phase 3, but I, like everyone else, I'm going to pin my hopes on a phase 3. I think with the variants of illness that we see out there right now, and some of the modeling would tell us that we're still in for a pretty rough road until we get the ability to fully vaccinate everyone who is willing to be vaccinated in Washington State. So, but there's no doubt that I'm hoping, and I think our caucus is hoping, to continue to move toward a full reopening. The question is just really pace, and can we vaccinate faster than these new highly virulent versions of COVID-19 take over the prior versions of it.
Yeah, and I would just add that, we have been working closely with the governor. I appreciate that the governor has shown flexibility and has been listening. Cases, I think, in the last few weeks went down even faster than maybe he expected or any of us expected. It shows Washingtonians making sacrifices. It's so important to continue social distancing and wearing a mask because there will at some point be a phase 3, and we all want to get there. And we're going to get there by keeping our guard up through this process. And I was gratified to see not only that there was a change to the 3 or 4 metrics so that more of the state could get there, but that there was even a recalculation based on a data error over the weekend that allowed the South Central region to get there. And although none of the 4 of us represent that region, I think we were all glad to see that the whole state was able to move forward, because the whole state is doing well in terms of protecting our neighbors and our families and our coworkers from COVID.
So we will go to Keith Eldridge with Como. Keith, go ahead.
Hi, good to see everybody. Follow up on Jerry's question. Is Senate Bill 5114, the phase 2 bill, is that dead for the session? You're not going to let it out of committee? Because right now everybody is in phase 2, but they could easily slip back if the metrics go in that direction. Plus, a lot of the restaurants are saying they need to really be at 50% minimum. And right now they're stuck at 25. Would you be willing to talk to the governor if there is no phase 3 at this point, at least modifying phase 2 to go to 50%? It's called the roadmap to recovery. Well, the roadmap has ended. There is no phase 3. How are people supposed to be willing to make the effort to move forward?
Well, I think with most of the state just getting to phase 2 and everybody going to be there for at least 2 weeks, then it means that there's some time here to figure out what the next step is. And I think the numbers, the disease, the hospitalization, that's what's going to really drive, and how well we all do in maintaining the social distancing and wearing a mask, it's really going to drive that. In terms of that bill, I feel like the goals of that bill have largely been achieved, which is to get the state to phase 2. But we'll continue with discussions with the governor and our colleagues across the aisle and public health experts and try to support and assist in any way we can. But, the most important 2 things for getting our economy back open are, 1, to continue the social distancing and wearing a mask, and 2, is the vaccine. And that's why that COVID relief bill was so important. It had even more support and resources for getting the vaccine distribution out. And, vaccine distribution and administration is not just a health imperative, it's also an economic imperative. It's an education imperative because it helps kids get back to school as well. So I think there's a lot of energy going into that for all those reasons.
And for Speaker Jenkins, you wear many hats in your Come Pierce County Health Department hat. Do you believe restaurants could safely reopen at 50%?
So Keith, just to be clear, during legislative session, I'm on a leave of absence. So I'm not privy to the data and the decision-making that's happening at the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department. I think that what we should do is see what happens with the 25% opening, see if our disease rates increase, decrease, remain flat. And I think that's what will tell us whether or not a 50% reopening is the next thing to move to. Beyond that, so again, I'm not, I have a public health background, but I'm not speaking as a public health official right now. They may have other opinions about it. But again, we have to really see what the data tells us. I think that one of the things that is, again, continues to be of grave concern is when you have versions of the disease that are developing that are much more transmissible, and it looks like from information we're getting now may have more serious consequences to them, and may be harder on people when they get the disease. We have to be watching too to what kind of transmission is happening. Is it the Great Britain, the Great Britain version, the South African version, the Brazilian version, right? We've got a lot of different things going on right now, but I don't think we should rule it out. What we do need to do is follow the science and look at the data points and let that guide us in what we do. The hospitality industry has also told me that they need to have the opening be closer to 50% to really be able to break even or make a little money. And so I think that's, I'd love to get there too. I think Senator Billig has told us how we get there. Social distancing, masking, all of the things that are in place now with phase 2.
You have a follow-up?
How about the fact there is no phase 3?
Yeah, well, there wasn't a phase 2 for a while either, right? So I get, yeah, Keith.
But there was a phase.
Working on a phase, right? There were no phases but there were no phases for a while, and then there were 4 phases, and then there were no phases, and now we're at a phase 1, a phase 2. Right. I think working with the Gov's office, and my guess is they're working right now. I just haven't talked to them about it, but my guess is that they're working right now on what a phase 3 looks like.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Next, we will go to Rich Smith of The Stranger. Rich, go ahead.
Thanks. Hi, this one's for Speaker Jenkins. Is Rep. Drew Hansen's bipartisan public broadband bill, HB 1336, headed for a vote on the House floor?
I think it's in appropriations right now. I don't know. Yeah, I see Rep. Sullivan shaking his head yes. So it's in appropriations right now. We probably have more bills in appropriations right now than we've had in a very, very long time. So I think Rep. Hansen's bill is very popular. People would like to see it come to the floor, but our budget writers now need to make an assessment about the number of bills that we can move out of appropriations and fund. The House has a rule that we fund in our budget any bill that has an appropriation that moves off the floor. I don't know, Rep. Sullivan, if you want to add anything to that.
No, just you're exactly right. We're going to be scheduling pretty much 15 bills per day between now and our cutoff on next Monday. And so this will, I'm sure, be on the list for hearing. We'll see how it goes.
Do you have a follow-up?
No, that's all. Thanks.
Great. Next, we'll go to Joseph Claypool with WNPA. Joseph, go ahead.
Hi, thank you, everybody. I was just hoping to get, this is for anyone, by the way, just kind of a general feeling about some of the police reform bills that have been introduced this session, and kind of just the general feeling you guys all have about those as deadlines are approaching.
Senator Rendell, you want to take that one?
Sure. I will say there is a lot of energy and support, not only from our caucus, but I think reflective of what we're hearing from our constituents, that we definitely need to take some action this year. As you know, there are a number of bills that have been introduced in the House and the Senate, and we've been working closely, particularly amongst the members of Color Caucus in both chambers, as well as leadership and the House's police reform leadership team, to really try and figure out what the best, most impactful steps we can make are this year to make our communities feel safer and to ensure that folks are protected by guardians and that we continue pushing back against a warrior culture, as I know you've heard Senator Dingra remark on before. I feel confident that we'll make some really meaningful progress, but it's, I think, too soon for my crystal ball to work regarding which bills are going to pass this year, but I do feel really confident that we'll make progress.
Sweet, thank you.
And Joseph, you have a follow-up?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Great, all right.
Aaron, can I just add on the House side, you know, we have moved all the highest priority police accountability bills that we have in the House out of the Public Safety Committee. We did that last week. We've moved 2 of them off of the floor and sent them over to the House, or excuse me, the Senate. We have a number of others, some of which are in appropes, some of which are in rules right now. We start floor action next week. And I think we, just as Senator Randall said, we have high hopes to be able to make real progress this year. And this won't be a one and done, a 1 year only kind of approach. It's taken us a long time to get where we're at in the world, and it'll take us a long time to get to another place.
And next we'll go to Hannah Scott. Hannah actually had to email in her question, so I'll read the first one here. Where does everyone stand on the card tab relief bill just introduced by Senator Nobles? It doesn't lower card tabs, but allows them to be paid in quarterly payments.
Well, I guess the bill was just introduced. I'm sure it'll go to our Transportation Committee. That bill was brought to us a number of years ago by Representative Reeves at the time. And so, you know, it's something that we're aware of. You know, I know the Transportation Committee, Representative Fye has been working on a lot of broad issues, and that is one of the issues that he has focused his attention on.
Yeah, and I'll just say I really appreciate Senator Nobles bringing this bill up. It's something Senator Leas has worked on in the past, and many other members of our Transportation Committee. You know, one of the things that people hear from their constituents is, I understand, I appreciate that this investment is going to things I support, like transit and active transportation and other things that are important to my community, but boy, is it hard to make that payment all at once. And so this is a way to provide some relief to be able to spread out the payments a little bit. And I think it makes a lot of sense.
And Hannah has a follow-up question for Senator Randall, which she'd like an update on some of the equity bills making their way through the legislative process.
Great, thanks for that question, Hannah. As you heard both from Speaker Jenkins and from Senator Billig at the beginning of this, and I'm sure you've heard many times before, equity is at the top of our priority list in both chambers to really focus on this year. And so we were excited to move an education equity bill off the floor, you know, the first week of floor action, Senator Doss's bill, and send that over to the House to make sure that our educators and the K-12 system have all the tools that they need to, you know, support student learning in an equitable way. We also have some work in the higher education space that I've been proud to work with educators on around not only equity on our college campuses, but also in our medical system, working with doctors and providers on continuing medical education requirements. That's 5229 that just got pulled out of rules. And we're excited to make some progress on that. We also are doing a lot of work across, not just in discrete equity buckets, but across all of our policy areas to really center equity. You know, we talked about the credit score bill earlier this year. We have another policy that I'm really excited to see movement on, reforming driving while license suspended. In our justice reform work, we have, you know, more equity bills moving. So I think you'll see by the end of session of equity in every single one of our policy areas making progress. But there's a lot of movement happening both on the floor already, as well as you know, moving forward in the coming weeks.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Melissa Santos with Crosscut. Melissa, go ahead. Melissa, do you have a question? Melissa, you just went on mute. Okay, well, we might have lost Melissa there. So that's the end of the questions. If anybody else, members, if you'd like to, oh, Melissa says her audio isn't working, so we'll follow up with her after. Members, if you'd like to say something in closing, I'll turn it back over to you.
I see that Jerry has another question in the chat.
All right, Jerry, go ahead.
Hey, just a quick question. I realize maybe Senator Randall have the answer, but the legislation to reduce the threshold for passing school bonds to 55%, I believe that's moving out of a committee again, but what's the prospects of this actually passing the floor, reaching voters this year? This is an ongoing conversation, so how serious are the majorities on getting it to voters?
Thanks, Jerry. You know, this is an issue that was super important to me before I joined the legislature and continues to be really important to a lot of us who represent districts where schools are struggling to pass the bonds they need to, you know, modernize their classrooms and make sure that their buildings are safe for students. I know that Representative Stonier has a bill on the House side. I had not a companion exactly, but a bill to move from the supermajority to a 55%. Who knows if we'll pass it this year, but I think our caucus continues to be committed to pushing for progress. I know our educators have testified not only on that bill, but on other bills in committee that we need to make progress here. So I'm optimistic, but cautiously so.
Jerry, do you have a follow-up?
No, thanks. I appreciate it.
You bet. All right, now I will turn it over to the members for a closing statement.
Well, I appreciate this opportunity each week to have this dialogue. I appreciate the work that all of you in the media do in sharing what's happening in Olympia with our constituents and people all over the state. So thank you. And I think we're getting into sort of an exciting part of the session. So I'm sure there will be lots to see and write about. And we will maintain our commitment to transparency and access as we have, and keep working to make progress for the people of Washington State.
I would just add simply, it's my hope that this is the only policy cutoff will ever have a press availability in this way.
Here.
So one and only time. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, thank you all. We'll see you next week.